up dive. Feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, so I remember I share and subscribe. Join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the crew. Untold Radio Network, the secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
Good morning, monsters, and welcome to this week's episode of Monsters on the Edge on the Untold Radio Network. I'm your host, Barnaby, and today's episode is going to be pre-recorded, just so you guys know going into it. If we were making questions or comments, we're not here to take them, so just keep that in mind as we go forward. Coming up, guys, we are winding down the year here for Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. This weekend, we are going to be in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin at the Soul and Synergies Meta Parapro Promotions event, November 30th. This is in Fond du Lac, Rolling Meadows Drive in Fond du Lac. We are going to be bringing out the Haydn Adventure traveling exhibit to this event and doing the Haydn presentation. So if you're interested in coming out and seeing that, we will be there. And then, guys, coming up in Milwaukee, Sunday, December 1st, we are going to be at the Milwaukee Krampus event. It is a huge event downtown Milwaukee in the Brewery District. Check it out, MilwaukeeKrampussnatch.com. There you go, right on the screen. All this and more can be found at wisconsincaps.com. Click on that public events tab, and you can get all the information there. All right, if you want to show your support for all things here on the Untold Radio Network, here's how.
Hey, Untold Radio Network fans. Want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.
All right, guys, returning to the show this week is Ryan Edwards. He is an acclaimed cryptozoologist and author that was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. As a child, he was a fan of the natural world, paleontology, and mysteries. These led him straight into the arms of cryptozoology. At a young age, Ryan Edwards fell in love with cryptozoology because it demonstrates that there are still mysteries out there in our natural world. He has spent over 10 years researching the menagerie of unrecognized species seen across the world. At a young age of 20, Ryan Edwards was able to get his first book, Cryptids of the World, published. Now Ryan spends his time traveling around Texas and America and the America South, lecturing and educating others about science. Ryan Edwards' goal isn't to force others to believe in these creatures, but to educate them and for them to come to their own conclusions. In the world of cryptozoology, there has to be a marriage of both science and superstition, a mix of logic and illogic. So please welcome to the show, Ryan Edwards. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey guys, it's good to be here, Barnaby.
Awesome. I am excited to have you. We chatted a couple months ago back here about your first book, Sasquatch, A Prehistory of the Living Legend. That was awesome. If people are interested, you can go back and check that out. But you have a brand new book out. Is that right?
That I do.
Awesome. So here's your new book. Tell us all about it.
Of course. Well, Beyond Bigfoot, it's kind of like a follow-up of Sasquatch, A Prehistory of a Living Legend. Because in that researching that book, one thing I've come across especially is recently in Bigfootology and with Bigfoot research, there's a variety of types of descriptions people bring up. Mm-hmm. One of the main things that people might see is like the type chart I've seen, like 10 types of Bigfoot seen in North America. And at least me being someone who has a little bit of background in biology, I'm just like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, if there is one unknown species of Sasquatch seen in North America, how can it be like subgroups or subspecies, things like that? But if you go into a deeper analysis of research of Sasquatch, you see that there are other cryptids being seen in North America that are primate-like. The three I bring up especially in this book is the devil monkey, the gugwe, and the North American ape. The devil monkey, of course, seen as a giant baboon-like creature. Gugwe, fairly recently seen, more of a Bigfoot, but with a baboon-like head. And of course, North American apes, a well-known cryptid. The name was coined by Mark Hall and Lauren Coleman.
Interesting. So are these more like regional sightings, or where do you get the different creatures?
Well, they are fairly regional. For instance, the gugwe, it's usually seen along in Quebec, parts of Canada, parts of the Northeast. Some sightings have ventured into the South in recent years. And then the devil monkey is primarily seen in the American South, primarily seen along the Appalachian Trails, parts of the Mississippi River Delta, while the nape is kind of more of an anthropoid creature. But think of it as like a chimpanzee that has more bipedal tendencies. It's what we call an obligate biped. These are primarily seen along the Mississippi River Delta, parts of Ohio, parts of Arkansas, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, the Southwoods, hotter, warmer environments, and more kind of adaptable for a primate. It's areas where you would kind of expect a primate to be seen. A lot of times, if people reference, especially with napes, Sasquatch prints with a divergent big toe, the one that kind of goes off to the side. That's a feature indicative of North American apes. If people referencing baboons in the woods, people like to describe a baboon but the size of a human. That's more indicative of these devil monkeys being seen around the country. And these gugwe, it's something that's very peculiar in and of itself. It means face eater. And pretty much people are referencing seeing a Sasquatch-like creature, but with a more mandrill or baboon-like prognatic face. They're kind of like a muzzle, very similar to the dogman phenomena. If you've ever heard of the Beast of Seven Shoots, that's believed to be a gugwe.
Interesting. Now, you don't think that these are actually dogman, or do you think that the two creatures are kind of misidentified together?
I believe it's a misidentification because one big thing, especially with the bipedal canine phenomena, is the digitigrade legs. People see these creatures as having the canine hawk, like almost like people describe like backwards facing legs. That's more indicative of something that's canine like, not very something that's very primate like. People that describe gugwees, they're describing something with a flat foot and also, interestingly, sometimes three-toed feet, which is very peculiar because in my research and with physical descriptions of the devil monkey phenomena, they're also described as having three toes. And if anyone researches Sasquatch here, and especially in the South, three-toed footprints is a very common phenomena, at least characteristic-wise, morphologically wise, here in the South for Sasquatch. Supposedly, the Falk monster, the Beast of Margaret Creek, was a three-toed creature. Supposedly, a lot of these skunk apes seen here in the South have three toes. So maybe it's some type of genetic malmonormity or some type of mutation, or could it just be maybe just a characteristic that is found within the species? Because one thing I bring up is that, okay, if these are regular primates living in the woods, there are no primates that we know of that have three toes. There's not a lot of just vertebrates in general that have three toes. One thing I bring up is like, okay, so one primate that we know that has less than five digits is the spider monkey. Spider monkeys have lost their thumb because it's not useful when they're climbing, so they have just four digits. Another thing I bring up is what we call the ostrich people of Africa. They're called the ostrich people because they have a genetic malformity that causes their toes to fuse together, so it looks like they have like only two or three toes. That's a very common phenomenon within one tribe. Could that be happening with these creatures? It's a possibility. But it's just a very interesting little characteristic that's shared between devil monkeys and gugwees. The napes have just a regular five toes.
That's interesting. Yeah, you bring up a good point. We hear a lot about like the orang pendek and these other creatures like overseas and stuff where you have these other versions of the Bigfoot creatures, the smaller ones or that, but you don't hear too much about that in the United States. Not many people talking about that.
Yeah, like for instance, if like we bring up like the orang pendek, like here in the American South, you have the like little red man of the Mississippi Delta. They'd like to call. They describe Bigfoot-like creatures, but like only 4 to 5 feet tall, and supposedly these things are fully grown. So some people suspect could these things be baby Bigfoot? Like even one, I've even heard some people speculate that dwarfism, like for instance, dwarfism occurs within humans. Could this also occur? This also does occur in some primates. Could this occur in Sasquatch? Or is it part of a bigger phenomenon called the proto-pygmies? The proto-pygmy phenomena, it's Lauren Coleman came up with the idea of like these smaller Sasquatch being seen all around the world. The Alukes of parts of the Yucatan, the Duende of Central America, the Orang Pendek seen out in Sumatra, the Agugwi of Africa. Could these creatures be connected to that somehow? There's some type of other phenomena occurring along Sasquatch here in North America. And one thing I bring up especially is like the realism of this. Like, okay, Sasquatch, if that creature, we haven't solved if that creature exists. Is there 3 other unknown primates being seen alongside North America? What's the probability and what's the possibility? It's possible, but it's probable. It's unlikely. So I try to go into like, okay, could these be misidentifications? Could these be possibly just legends that have been passed on through the years? But there is evidence for these creatures. Like especially the devil monkey. There is, if you ever heard of the DeRitter photos. This was some photos of this road-killed creature in DeRitter, Louisiana. And people look up like devil monkey photo. It's very common it pops up. And I bring it up in the book, and so like, okay, supposedly the local wildlife experts were like, oh, well, it's a killed Pomeranian that got hit by a car. But if you look at these photos, the creature is like the size of like a 6-year-old. So it's like, okay, that's some type of primate it has fairly human-like proportions, but almost looks like some type of like weird baboon-like creature. So that's something that could be proof of the devil monkey existing. because that's been especially seen even here in Texas.
So whatever happened to the specimen? Do you know?
Supposedly someone like with every type of cryptid roadkill creature, someone came picked it up. Could have been someone that. Some people say it was an official that came and picked it up. Some people say it was just some local, but there is no remains that we know of this creature. Wish there was, because then if we had like some type of hair sample or like even a bone, an anatomist can easily be like, oh no, that's not canine, that's a primate bone. But because like everything with cryptozoology, of course, we don't really have a lot of good physical evidence.
Absolutely. So there's, back in the day, there was a lot of circuses and other things that traveled around, traveling shows throughout the country. And as you know, like train wrecks and things happened and animals escaped. What do you think that the odds are that these animals are just a released species of primate that has adapted and kept going over here?
It is a possibility. Like we do know, like for instance, I live in South Texas. Just a couple miles south of me, there is a group of, I believe, macaques that were released by local researchers and stuff, and they became a wild population of macaques. Out in Florida, there was literally a wild population of squirrel monkeys. So there is a possibility that some of these creatures are released animals. But it's also funny too because a lot of these sightings go back to before there were wild primates being spread here in North America. I believe the first gorilla came here in the 1880s, I believe. And some of these sightings go back to even before that. Because one thing you look at in like historical newspapers, like is I look for like naming of these creatures. Like if you look at it, a lot of like Bigfoot stories go by wild man being seen in the woods or monkey being seen in the woods. Then when gorillas were discovered, people started calling these animals gorillas, chimpanzees, unknown ape being seen in the woods. So a lot of these stories go back to even before really gorillas and chimpanzees were really brought to North America and were used in circuses. But there is a possibility, like I bring up with the North American ape phenomena. That's seen as more of like a chimpanzee-like creature. And the possibility that some of these sightings are chimps being seen in the woods. Like, for instance, a Monster Quest episode. They brought up chimpanzees being found in the woods. And back in my mind, I'm like, well, some of these could be chimpanzees. Some could be possibly maybe young Sasquatch being seen. But also, what if some of these are these North American apes being seen in the woods? Because the main source of evidence for that was a photograph of a footprint taken by Lauren Coleman in Decatur, Illinois, back in the 60s. This well-known photo shows a human print, but it has a divergent big toe that comes out to the side. And of course, that's a very primate-like characteristic. Some researchers don't believe it's legitimate. They say it might be just some type of strange, maybe it might be just an injury. Some people might speculate that maybe it's like some type of like weird artifact in the photo. But in my belief, and talking to Lauren Coleman myself, I believe this is a true footprint of a unknown species. And a lot of these Bigfoot sightings also reference divergent big toes. So maybe this is another primate being seen here in the woods that could be also misidentified as a Sasquatch itself.
Excuse me. Yeah, that's interesting. Like we said, like the orang pendek and some of those other smaller species overseas as well also have that divergent big toe.
Yes.
Instead of the straight feet like we're very familiar with. Now, do you think that the footprint does that reference with any other known primate? Like, could it have been a misidentification?
Actually, it's interesting because no known primate that's existing. There is a primate that is prehistoric from our from paleontology that has a very similar foot, and that is Oreopithecus. Oreopithecus was a Dryopithecine found in I believe modern day Italy, and it was a bipedal primate. But it was interesting because it had bipedalism unlike any other primate. It had a human-like foot but with a divergent big toe, but the divergent big toe was more distally placed, closer to the ankle, and it was almost acting like a tripod to an extent. It would use its big toe and its toes to kind of like have like a tripod like stance, and it would be able to walk bipedally like that. And this Drypithecine is nowhere on our evolutionary line. It's not related to humans at all. So it's a group of primates that evolved bipedalism independently from genus Homo. Another example we like to call convergent evolution. And it's funny because Oreopithecus in the 1960s really wasn't researched much. So if this was somehow a hoax or something like that, how would you reference a morphology that is very unique but has only been seen like once or twice in paleontological record? Kind of interesting like that. And I've kind of speculated that maybe this creature could be maybe a surviving Oreopithecine, or maybe it could be another example of convergent evolution, that it's something that's related to it. Because, of course, we talked about in my first interview with you that my Drypithecus hypothesis that Drypithecines moved to North America and became Sasquatch. Why couldn't one of those creatures have become this North American ape? Because think about it. A lot of people get the wrong idea about evolution. They think everything's evolving to become human-like. Like what a perfect thing in the evolutionary family tree, which honestly we aren't. So maybe if you look at prehistoric North America, it was swampy, especially the regions these animals are seen, swampy, humid. There's an environment very similar to Miocene Europe. So what if some of these Oreopithecines found an environment similar to home, so they didn't really change much? And they didn't end up becoming Sasquatch, but they became what we now know as these North American apes. Maybe they diverged off a lineage maybe a couple million years ago. And that's something I also bring up with the devil monkey, is I believe the devil monkey is something that evolved here in North America and didn't move from somewhere else, but evolved here in North America.
So do we have any fossil records or anything of prehistoric primates in North America, or has there been any record of them at all?
Actually, that's an interesting part. Not a lot of people realize that the primate family tree started in North America about 66 million years ago, right after the KPG extinction. Some of the earliest pre-simians started here in North America. Very basal primates. Like if you'd see these animals, you'd probably think they look more like squirrels or like rats or rodents than primates. But some of these were very prosimian-like, like the modern day or bush baby. These creatures probably would have looked very similar to that. These were found during the Eocene. Most of them went extinct in North America by around 50 million years ago. But there's one species, Ecomorphs, or it means in Sioux, little cat man, that was found 5 million years, 10 million years after all the other primates went extinct. So this is literally what we call a ghost lineage. We don't know where this creature came from, but we found it. And it's fairly recent. So I personally believe that, okay, what if some of these creatures did survive into the modern day? Because let's be honest, we only know 10% of the known simian species in the first place. What if they evolved here in North America and became what we now know as the gugwe and the devil monkey? Because, sorry, but with me, I bring up one thing with cryptozoology is looking at known species. And when people reference these devil monkeys, they reference baboons, geladas, mandrills. And these are papionins. These are large body primates used to big open areas, very much kind of canine-like, you can say, the long prognathic muzzles, the long canines, kind of almost the jittergrade legs because they're out there in the open country. And let's look at prehistoric North America, the Pliocene and Pleistocene. What do we have? Open savannas, large ungulates, we had elephant-like creatures. We had large carnivores. If you went to Pliocene North America, you would have speculated that this looks like Africa, not Yellowstone. Mm-hmm. So if these primates had evolved, I think due to convergent evolution again, they would evolve to look very baboon-like because a very similar environment to modern-day Africa. And what do people see with these devil monkeys? Something very baboon-like. So I think this convergent morphologies doesn't show a convergence in genetic in genetic convergence, but morphological convergence. Due to similar environments, they became very similarly looking, but they're not genetically related.
Interesting. So, I lost my question there.
You're good.
Yeah. Do you think that do we have any human footprints going back all the way that have the divergent big toe?
Humans, it's kind of hard. Early in Australopithecines, they kind of had a divergent big toe a little bit to an extent. If you look at the Lake Taoli tracks, these are some of the first ever like hominid tracks ever found in Lake Taoli. They have not really divergent big toe, but it kind of verges out a little bit more than our big toe. So it was morphologically found in our earlier hominid species, yes. But Homo, we had already had like 5 inline toes at that point. So what I bring up, like with Sasquatch, for instance, too, it's a very human-like footprint, but it's something non-human. It's the same thing with these creatures. It has a very kind of human-like footprint, but it has that divergent big toe, which is indicative of an arboreal existence. Which, with the North American ape especially, a lot of people see these creatures in the trees, climbing, be able to like clamber into trees, and that divergent big toe is indicative of that. The north of these devil monkeys, they're primarily seen in troops on the ground, and having large, wide feet with 3 toes and more digitigrade-looking legs is indicative of that. Open country runners, creatures that can be able to like be out there on the ground at long, extended periods of time. And the gugui, same thing. They also have 3 toes. So even what I speculate on, of course, we have no evidence of this. It's just pure speculation. That maybe these guguis and devil monkeys are somehow related to each other. That possibly, kind of going into my second book, Sasquatch Prehistory, maybe when these creatures that became Sasquatch ventured into North America during prehistory, maybe a group of these indigenous primates convergently evolved alongside Sasquatch and became more Sasquatch-like to be competitors with them, and some stayed away and became what we now know as devil monkeys, and some convergently evolved alongside Sasquatch and are now known as these guguis. Of course, this kind of goes into ideas of like speculative evolution and stuff like that, but at least along evolutionary lines, this makes sense. Just that we don't have any evidence for it. And of course, as we know of, especially in the eastern parts of North America, east of the Mississippi, fossil creation is very uncommon due to just how the rock is, where we've built, things like that. So we don't have any fossil record of this occurring, but to be honest, within the primatological field, lack of fossil evidence is what's common. Like, we only know 10% of the known fossil record of any primate in the first place. Heck, there's a little joke that goes around paleoanthropology that all the evidence that humans ever existed can fit in a shoebox. All of our ancestors. So maybe there is evidence out there of this occurring, but we just haven't found it yet in the fossil record. Because I can't think of a lot of people looking for primate bones in any type of fossil record here in North America. They're looking for what's known, not for what's unknown.
So when you're talking about these, the guguis and the devil monkeys being very baboon-like and stuff, do people see them traveling in packs like that or in groups?
The gugui, they primarily see as like a lone, like kind of like the lone hunter. A lot of people like to call it like the polar bear of the Sasquatch world. Very territorial, highly territorial actually, and they are lone hunters. While these devil monkeys, some people have described seeing 2 or 3 at a time. Some people reference them as moving in groups and like in these like almost like I believe a group of baboons called like a congress, I believe, something like that. But like moving in these like packs. So it's a possibility that maybe they could be also pack hunters as well. Maybe if they hunt like larger animals like deer and stuff like that, maybe they could coordinate because primates are known for doing that. For instance, chimpanzees coordinate their hunts. Maybe these devil monkeys do the same thing.
So a lot of people talk about how, Bigfoot, Sasquatch is very intelligent, more like humanistic intelligence, So do you think that these creatures, the other ones, have a very similar intelligence, or are they more primate, lower intelligence, I guess you want to say?
I believe they're highly intelligent, but I think one thing primarily is that I don't think they have like the intelligence of like Sasquatch, but they might have the adaptability of Sasquatch, being able to be elusive, being able to get into like areas where humans won't find them. Because
Mhm.
a lot of times, especially we've seen, especially with these devil monkeys and apes being seen here in the South. What's the old thing that comes from Legend of Bog Creek? They always follow the rivers. Same thing with these creatures. They follow the river valleys. They follow the Ohio River Valley, the Mississippi, the offshoots of the Mississippi. So that shows intelligence right there. Maybe they're not as intelligent as Sasquatch, but I think they're as adapted to the environment as they are, or even maybe even better than Sasquatch, because these creatures aren't seen as much as the Bigfoot in the first place. Like, how many people think of how many sightings we have of Bigfoot compared to how many sightings we have of devil monkeys? It's fairly uncommon. Maybe that could be because maybe there's less of them. Maybe they live in smaller groups. Or maybe one thing I bring up is a lot of times when people are seeing devil monkeys, they might be just saying, well, maybe that's just a released baboon.
Mhm.
Maybe when people see apes, maybe they're like, oh, I saw a chimpanzee. That's cool. Something like that. They're not thinking that it's a cryptid. They might just think it's a known species being a known species that was released into the woods where they're non-indigenous.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I was wondering too. You talk about less sighting reports and that. Well, maybe, like you said, maybe these people are just writing them off as something that is known. And, like you see a deer cross the road, you're not going to report it to anybody. You're going to say, oh, I saw a deer.
Yeah,
And you see these chimpanzee or devil monkey things cross the road and you go, oh, it's just a chimpanzee, whatever. Huh. Somebody let their pet out or something, and
yeah.
you're not getting those reports.
Yeah, like a lot of times, especially with devil monkey sightings, these are the more fantastical reports. Stories of them attacking cars or killing livestock or them attacking houses. We don't have a lot of reports of them just crossing a road or just being seen in the woods for like a split second. Because honestly, I don't think a lot of these reports would be reported in the first place. Because like let's for instance bring up the state of Florida. The state of Florida we know has a population of released primates.
Mhm.
But a lot of Florida has sightings of these chimps being seen in the woods. People will report seeing orangutans in the woods.
Mhm.
Because it's also go hand in hand with these unknown primates, as well as the skunk apes being seen in the South as well. Like, I bring up the idea that I believe the skunk ape itself is a regional name for Bigfoot, but it's funny how a lot of these Sasquatches in the South are being seen as different morphologically from the ones seen in the Pacific Northwest. They have longer hair, they're smaller, they are more kind of chimpanzee like. Could that be indicative of these North American apes? Possibly, but I think honestly what they are is what we call an ecomorph. Ecomorphs are the same species, but due to different environments, they've evolved differently. Think of like gray wolves. The gray wolves up in Alaska and Canada get gigantic. The ones down in Yellowstone get a little bit smaller. The ones that were once indigenous to the American South got much smaller and were much skinnier because of different environments. Black bears. Black bears in different parts of the United States get in different sizes because of the available nutrients, available land, and also available prey species. Maybe the same thing happens with Sasquatch. Maybe some of these Sasquatch supposed subspecies aren't really subspecies at all, but are the same species, but just due to different environments, have changed morphologically, but not genetically.
So why do you think that the ones down in Florida and stuff have longer hair? That seems like it would be opposite of what you would want down there with the higher humidity and the higher temperatures and stuff than that in the Pacific Northwest.
Well, one thing that we know with longer hair, it could be maybe to ward off mosquitoes to an extent.
Hmm.
We've seen where like primates with longer hair, especially orangutans and stuff like that, are in environments with more biting insects, or use the longer hair as maybe a way to like ward off predators, stuff like that. So maybe, and even some people speculate that maybe they use these longer hair to look bigger. A lot of times, like for instance, with birds and stuff like that, they use plumage to look bigger. We've like if you scare a cat, what does a cat do? Their hair stands up on their backs to make them look bigger to predators. Maybe this longer hair helps in the same way. But it's funny too because I've brought this up with Sasquatch phenomena before. It's interesting how some of these primates seen in the woods, especially with Sasquatch, have longer hair on their heads. Like some people describe Bigfoot like with short hair along the body but longer hair on the head. That's a very human-like characteristic, honestly. Like as we know, primates, they have one solid layer of fur all across the body. Gorillas, chimps, stuff like that. Look at Patty in the Patterson Gilman film. She has one solid length of hair throughout her body. Some spots that's a little bit longer, like a silverback gorilla. But humans, we're the ones that have like longer hair on our heads, longer hair in certain spots of our body. And that's what's seen with certain Sasquatch. And it's like, I'm not saying that it's human, but it's a very human-like characteristic. Well, a lot of Sasquatch seen around the country have like that, like, we talked to eyewitnesses had a one solid body hair length around the whole body, while some are being seen like with a longer hair on their heads, and that's a distinct morphological trait right there that we can speculate on for days, but all it is just purely just speculation. Maybe like sometimes Sasquatch DNA comes back as more human-like. Maybe these are something that maybe happened within our prehistoric lineage, that maybe it's some type of interbreeding between our species and their species. Because as we know of, heck, the human genome, 6% of us isn't even human, it's Neanderthal. We have Denisovan in our DNA. So we know our species is interbred with other species in the past. Maybe it happened in our past, or maybe even more recently with other primates that we just don't know of yet.
Why do humans have longer hair on their heads? I've always kind of thought that was interesting. Like none of the other species, aside from like horses, have like a mane or something. But what is the advantage of having longer hair on our heads?
One thing is heat insulation, because that primarily came out of Neanderthals. Neanderthals especially had longer hair because it's been shown that with longer hair, it's able to insulate the head. Because think about it, when it's cold, what do they say? The areas to cover up is your hands and your head. But having long hair on your hands wouldn't really be helpful because with be able to manipulate stuff. Yeah. But being it on the head, it helps with heat insulation and also helps out with like insects, stuff like that. So that's an evolutionary trait of us, of genus Homo, not of like other primates. There are some primates that are like known for like facial hair, like mustaches and stuff like that. But it's honestly primarily humans putting our own perspective on the primates. Like a lot of things we kind of anthropomorphize. Like, oh, that monkey has a mustache. Not really. It's just longer hair on the face. We like to put ourselves into nature, and that's another example of anthropomorphism in the first place.
Interesting. So I had a question and I lost it, and I brought it back and I lost it again. I have the same question and it keeps coming and going here.
Have a pen, like write it down. Like
I know I was gonna. I thought of it and I thought, no, I'm gonna remember it this time, and then I got off on another track. I mean, to be honest, like the reason I'm off track is because this is absolutely fascinating stuff. Like it's really interesting to hear about all this evolution and the things that you don't hear about. You hear, like I said, about some of the other species and stuff overseas, but we don't talk about stuff being right here. I don't know where people are listening, but us being here in North America and stuff talking about it.
No, and like also like the main reason I kind of wrote this book in the first place is because there's a lot of stuff that not a lot of people write about or talk about in the first place. Like, for instance, the newest book, Sasquatch Beyond Bigfoot, my foreword was written by Lauren Coleman, because Lauren Coleman's really the only person I knew of that really talks about names and also has brought up really devil monkeys in the first place. That's why I reached out to him with this book. Like, hey, I'm first of all, childhood hero in the first place. So I was like, hey, childhood hero, hey, tell me out with this book, because I'm like, when I did the research, I'm like, who do I reach out to? Like, no one really does this research in the first place. I can think of like 5 or 6 people that have Gugwe sightings and have like records of it. So I was like, okay, no one's really written about these creatures. Let me kind of put a kind of compendium of all the information that I have and speculate on their evolution. Because the one thing I bring up with cryptozoology with every cryptid is 4 parts. Their ecology, we'll speculate on that. Their morphology, what do people see? Their behavior, how do people say they act? And what's their possible evolutionary origin? Because with me at least, true cryptids that are unknown species living out there in the woods, have a natural history. Every animal does. Why wouldn't these animals? Well, cryptids I like to call paracryptids, these more dogman, goatman, stuff like that being seen in the woods. Those are truly something that's not biological. Where those coming from, I have no idea. But like the ones that are more primate-like, these are something that, okay, we have a reference for these. We know what it could possibly come from. What can we show with biology with these known species? Because for me at least, cryptozoology is the first step of zoology. We have to speculate on these creatures existing, and then once we discover them, when using scientific methods, then it becomes true zoology, true primatology. And I'm hoping like one day, like with Sasquatch, maybe hopefully one day it will be discovered one day, and then it becomes a primatological species. And one thing I bring up with a lot of researchers is the timeline of discovery. For instance, the gorilla. The lowland gorilla was referenced about thousands of years before we ever discovered it. The indigenous populations talked about them. When African slavers came to Africa, they referenced these mountain devils living in the woods, but no one really went to go look for them until Europeans came, and then they looked for them and they discovered the lowland gorilla. Chimpanzees, the same way. A lot of these large kind of cryptids that were once cryptids were talked about for hundreds of years before they were ever discovered. For instance, the giant squid and the kraken. That's another example. Like, so with cryptids being seen nowadays, I think Bigfoot really, honestly, has only been really researched since like the 50s. So it's only been researched for like 70 years now. So along this timeline of discovery, well, honestly, we have a lot more time until we probably will discover this creature because we're still doing the research to kind of go into it in the first place. But then again, like with a lot of these cryptids, you have all types of ways of doing the research. You have the people that believe we're researching a primate. You have people that we think we're researching a human. People that we think we're researching a spiritual being. So that's one thing I try to bring in with cryptozoology, especially and Bigfoot too, is narrowing it down. Kind of like, let's focus in on this with scientific method, and then hopefully that's how we discover these creatures. It's not speculating on if they're aliens or ghosts, but I'm speculating, okay, what do we know with science and what do we know with known species, and use that research for these unknown species.
Well, let's talk about a little bit about the discovery of the gorillas and stuff. How did that even happen? Like, if we're looking at this as hearing all these stories of the indigenous people and stuff of having these out there, and like you said, the slave trade and stuff like that. At what point did it go from, oh, there's these things out there, to actually going out there and looking for them? I mean, were they just looking? Like, I know there was a lot of like animal trade and stuff with zoos and circuses at the time. So was it just out of money? They could go and trap these things and sell them, or why did we bother going looking for those if we're not looking for Bigfoot?
What it was, I'm trying to remember the man that went with, because what happened is someone shot one. Someone killed one, and they were able to, like, oh, prove it exists. But I try to remember the man's name. I can't remember it now. But pretty much he was like monster hunting. He was like, okay, these supposed monsters live in the woods. Let's go look for them. And one attacked him. Supposedly, he shot it. And with that body, because back in Victorian era, what did we need for discovery? You needed a body back then. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of honestly with science nowadays still. Like, you need a body to prove it exists. So he shot one and was able to take it back to the village and prove, oh, there is a true living species living out there called gorillas. And one thing that's funny I bring up with gorillas too is that with Sasquatch, what's one story that's very common with the indigenous people is that these creatures drag off women, and that they steal babies, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Not a lot of people realize that the indigenous populations talked about gorillas kidnapping women, stealing babies, doing stuff like that. And now we know they don't do that. So, literally, one of the first pieces of art ever of a gorilla shows a gorilla walking on two legs with a Caucasian female underneath its arm, kind of like the King Kong of its day.
Mhm.
So, back then, these more monstrous attributes were added to this known species. Why not Sasquatch and stuff like that? Like, in my opinion, a lot of these stories of people getting kidnapped by Bigfoot could exist, but a lot of it, I believe, is a lot more adding monstrous attributes to this creature. Because that's one thing with cryptozoology in general, is that because these creatures are unknown, a lot of people say the unknown, they add more monstrous tendencies to it. So that's one thing with cryptozoology I bring up, is like, this isn't monster hunting, this is research. But due to a lot of people saying like, oh, like when I tell people I say, oh yeah, I look for Sasquatch. Like, oh, so you're one of those like rednecks that goes out there with a shotgun? I'm like, no. This is research. This is looking for data. But cryptozoology and just Bigfoot hunting in general has gotten a view of like the more romanticizing of like going out there looking for monsters. When in reality, all this is just animal research, but the animals just god dang smart. So it's harder to find.
Maybe we need more monster hunters again to go out there and find these things, because that's what seems like what did it back in the day.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just interesting, like it was a totally different time back then, even a couple hundred years ago, like how much people and the way the world is working, and
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Like, one thing that I think I saw a video on this one time on YouTube that like, is cryptozoology an aspect of colonialism? Like, because look back in the day of like Africa, one group of research, what research in cryptozoology I do a lot is African cryptids. Back in the day, during the colonial time, Africa was seen as the dark continent, as the last frontier that could have monsters still living inside of it. Think of like the Congolese dinosaurs being seen, the Mokeba Bembe, the Kongomoto, stuff like that. People were speculating like the Congo was some type of real life lost world, some type of like Jurassic Park back in the day. So that's how like the colonials saw Africa. And not a lot of people realize this. When Thomas Jefferson talked to Lewis and Clark once they traveled across the Mississippi, he told them to look out for saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, and mastodon. Because with humans, we see an area that's unexplored. We add the kind of like the lost time aspect to it. Of like, okay, there could be monsters still living there.
Mhm.
And cryptozoology is kind of a mainstay that's kind of left from that. Of like the kind of romanticizing of like going out there in the woods with a machete, hacking at trees until you find some type of unknown monster. And that's what I try to take away from cryptozoology. Is like, yeah, we have that kind of romanticized view of it, but honestly, doing that, you're going to end up more of a monster hunter than really a researcher. And with this, it's honestly the researchers that get the job done. Think about it. Who really got the research done with gorillas and chimpanzees? Diane Fossey and Jane Goodall, because they did the research. They're out there for months, years at a time, doing research with these primates. Same thing with Sasquatch. Like we need our own Bigfoot Jane Goodall out there finding where these creatures live, living out there for months at a time, but get them acclimated to them, and then have interaction with them. Because with cryptozoology, we have that idea of like monster hunting, but honestly, it's the research that will get us the answers.
Mhm. That's such a double-edged sword, like in order to do that research, you have to have the funding and the money, and nobody seems to want to put up the money or the funding for it. But on the
Yeah.
other side, you look at these like monster hunters or whatever. If everything is ruled by money, shouldn't there be somebody out there that's like, if I discover this creature, if I shoot a Sasquatch, I'll be a millionaire, I'll be on every TV show, I'll be everywhere. Where's that one guy that's out there that has that mentality then? That's, if money is the all powerful being here in this situation, it just seems weird that there isn't somebody out there doing that.
Yeah. And also the thing is too, is like with funding, also one big aspect of this is accountability, kind of, you can say, is like a lot of times the second you say I'm a Bigfoot hunter, people take 20 IQ points off of you.
Yeah.
Like, unless you're someone like a Dr. Meldrum or like a Cliff Barackman that's really coming at it from the scientific source, they see you as a nutcase. Like, for instance, when me personally in my 9-to-5 life, I'm an educator. And I've brought up like, oh yeah, my weekends I'm a Bigfoot hunter, and they look at you kind of crazily. So it's like a lot of these people that are willing to put up the money, the universities, the zoos, stuff like that, because cryptozoology has that kind of viewpoint of like, oh, get us a crazy person that goes in the woods. They won't fork up the money in the first place unless you're coming at it with that scientific method, with the more like, no, here's the evidence, here's what I'm willing to do. This is my scientific strategy, and you're going to do all of that as well. Because, like, anyone brings up that people don't like to share cryptid sightings in the first place because people will look at them like they're crazy. And that's something that we found throughout cryptozoology. And, like, especially, like, not to just mention Bigfoot, but, like, recently, in recent years, a lot of these other cryptids being seen around the world. Like, people seeing the dogman phenomenon, the goatman phenomenon, these skinwalkers, stuff like that. Bringing up you have a Bigfoot sighting, okay, that's realistic. If you tell someone I saw a werewolf in the woods, people now like, okay, that's now you're a little too crazy for that. Like, we have to think about stuff like how does it look to other people outside the field, outside of the world of cryptozoology? Because, like, for instance, last weekend I went to the Bigfoot Research Conference in Jefferson, Texas, and a lot of local people just from the town came in. And I love trying to get outside perspectives, because once you're in the world of cryptozoology, you're in the world of cryptozoology. It's a very specific kind of person. But if you get the views of people from outside of research, that's really what we need, is the people outside of research that are like right on the fence, that see the research and like, okay, this could work out, and they get into what we now know. Think of the people like Dr. Meldrum, Dr. Jeff Meldrum. He was anatomist before he was ever a Bigfoot researcher. Then he saw the evidence for the species, and that's what got him into the research. We need people like that, more the educated people, the people that really have the expertise in this field. Because, of course, cryptozoology might not be a field full of academics, but we do need the academic research. We need those people that have that knowledge to kind of add to this field, because we honestly need it. Because if we look at it, we haven't gotten the answers yet. That tells me we might need a change of format within just cryptozoology in general.
It brings legitimacy to what we're doing.
Yes.
Absolutely. Very cool. All right. We are coming up on the end of the show here, guys. I want to remind you got 2 books out, or 3 books out, right? You have your first book, and then this was your first Sasquatch, a prehistory of living legend. I don't have your first book. I guess I didn't have that one.
Yeah. Cryptids of the World. That's my first book.
Cryptids of the World. Awesome. Very good. And then this one, and then your newest book, Bigfoot Beyond the Other Unrecognized Primates of North America. Very cool. Yeah. Awesome. We got the show links down below here. We have the links to this one on Amazon, and your other 2 books are on Amazon as well. I know the other one is your first one out there as well?
Yes, it's available on Amazon. My two most recent books were published by Eerie Lights, and that's primarily done by David Weatherly. He's the owner of that company. They do primarily through Amazon, but my first book, Cryptids of the World, it was published through the Ingram Spark. So Barnes & Noble, half-price books, stuff like that. You'll find it anywhere. These 2 books you'll only find on eerielights.com or amazon.com.
Very cool. Awesome. And we got links to that in the show notes as well for you. Very good. Do you have any upcoming events or anything that you'd like to promote?
Events upcoming, I can't think of any other than there is one little thing that I'm working on here in South Texas. If anyone is a local to South Texas, the Austin area, San Antonio area, a good friend of mine, Chris Jordan, and I, He's a podcaster up in Austin. We're putting on an event series called a Symposium of Strange here in San Antonio, Texas. There's a local restaurant I work at. What we're doing is bi-monthly, every 2 months. We're bringing in local researchers, paranormal people, authors, stuff like that, and pretty much having like an old-fashioned like meetup, like with Crypto Mundo back in the day. Like, for instance, this November, we just had November 20th. We'll bring out Bradbury Kling of Ghost Lab. The first event we brought out Ken Gerhard because he lives here in San Antonio alongside me. Third event we had a alien abductee, Karen Wilkinson. So what we're kind of doing is like, okay, not a lot of people can go to these conferences. They're far, they're expensive, gas prices. We know how it is. It hurts my pocket too. So we're trying to bring these conferences to the people. The Symposium of Strange is a bi-monthly event. The next event's going to be November 20th. We have one in January, March. So we're bringing out different perspectives. We're bringing out people that are UFO researchers, people that are cryptozoologists, people that do ghost hunting. Think of it like a night of 14 research in general. And anyone who's local to South Texas, parts of like Austin, San Antonio, they can come on out. We have tickets. We have VIP. We also have general admission. We sell posters. The people sell their books. We have vendors. It's kind of like a little mini conference that's more intimate, more of like an author talk. You can kind of think of.
Very cool. Where can people get more information on that?
If you look on Symposium of the Strange online or go to our website, if you look it up on Facebook, I also have a link on my Facebook page as well, Symposium of the Strange. You'll find information there. If you look up Curious Events, that's a thing done by my good friend Chris Jordan of the Curious Realm podcast. He has it as well attached to all that. We try to do as much promotion as we can. We have posters. We have our website. We also, like, our posters here in town, we have QR codes. People can scan that and it goes straight to our website.
Perfect. I will get that in the show notes as well for anybody listening. You can get a link to that and head on over and check it out. Anybody that's down in Southern Texas. Sounds great. Or if you're not in Southern Texas, you still want to come out, I'm sure you guys would love to have them as well.
Yeah, like the first event, like it was me speaking. I had a good friend of mine, Rod Nichols. He does bear kind of Bigfoot. He does Bigfoot research here in San Antonio, and of course Ken Gerhard. So like we had a heavy hitter, then we had like everyone else. But like having bigger names, like it helps bring people out. Like people like I like to tell people, especially recently with us bringing out researchers, like meet someone on TV you never expect to be able to get to meet, like. Meet someone and be able to like talk to them, be able to like, hey, like I saw you on Discovery Channel once. Can I ask you these questions? Because at conferences, people are busy. It's hectic. You can't really get that one-on-one time sometimes. With the Symposium of Strange, we're trying to get people to more one-on-one time with these researchers and really be able to like educate people. Because a lot of people see the TV shows and they might hear a podcast. They don't really see the people in person talking about this research. Like, honestly, it's about making community of other researchers and also educating others on this field.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, you're absolutely right. These conventions and conferences are great, but there's so many people at them, and you meet so many people. You get like a couple minutes with each person that you're trying to talk to, and just to be able to sit down and pick the brain of someone, that's a great opportunity for people that are up and coming or people that have been established and just have questions for somebody else who has been there and done that. So,
yes,
awesome. Very cool. All right, man. Well, it is a pleasure talking to you. You are an absolute wealth of knowledge on all this stuff. It's really cool speaking with you and hearing about all the evolution and all that stuff. It's really cool. I think more people need to take a look at that and, how the world actually works and where we came from to get where we are today, because it's going to help us a lot with where we're going.
Yeah. Like how I always like to say, like with my books, I'm like, I come at Sasquatch from a more prehistoric perspective, because that's something honestly not a lot of people bring up. Like every Bigfoot book is trying to tell you, okay, Bigfoot exists because of this. I'm trying to say, I'm not trying to prove Bigfoot exists. I'm trying to say, like, okay, Bigfoot does exist, which it does. Where did it come from? Where did it evolve from? Because that's something not a lot of people bring up. Of course, like probably in every Bigfoot book they bring up Gigantopithecus or they bring up maybe Paranthropus, but this really goes in depth of the origins of these creatures.
Absolutely. Very cool. Keep up the good work, man. You got another book on the way? What are you working on now?
Right now, we're working 2 jobs and also taking care of some college courses. It's kind of hard to do it, but there might be 1 or 2 books I might be trying to work on. But just time-wise, it's hard to write. It's hard to write, and I'm one of those people that like I'm not going to write a book unless I really feel it, because I don't want to be like making it like, okay, I have to write this now. I need to feel like the creative juice is flowing in order to do that.
Awesome, man. Well, keep us updated, and love you have you back the next time you get one out, or the next time you got something cool coming up.
Of course, brother.
Awesome, man. You take care.
You too.
All right, guys, that is our show for this week. Thank you all for checking it out. We're going to get the Symposium of the Strange in the show notes as well there, and as well as links to all of his books there. You can check that out in the show notes for Ryan Edwards. Awesome guy, great wealth of knowledge. So, guys, until next time, thank you all for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share the Untold Radio Network and Monsters on the Edge with all of your friends. Until next time, guys, I'll see you on the edge.